what I love about this is most of you deliver great service. We said that from the outset. You're great at delivering service. People bond with your staff. They become part of the family. So how do you take that moment of bonding with a staff member and turn them into ambassadors for your business? What do you give them to say to walk away, other than, I fell in love with Simon and the magic trick, and I'll let Adam tell the story. But think about how you want to embed your story in that. How does the magic trick tie into the magic of the day? How do you create that as part of the ongoing story that you tell on the reef? So Adam, tell us a little bit about that experience and how you see that fits into the overall theme that you guys deliver.
Yeah, I guess what we do on Passions Paradise is we offer a very, very good product, a high quality product, but our staff are really encouraged to engage with the customers right from the get-go. So right from the time that they board the boat, our customers are almost in their face, chatting to them. We don't give them anything scripted to talk about. We don't, put anything forward. We don't give them any ideas. They're just talking about their own experiences of the reef. And we do encourage them to bring a little bit of themselves to the boat as well. So we've got one fella on the boat called Simon. He's been with us for coming up 6 years now. We'll tell you what, we'll do anything to keep him with the company. He's a pretty keen close-up magician. So on the way home, he doesn't really talk too much about the reef, but he gets the kids together, he gets anyone's interested together and puts on a little magic show. You look at pretty much any TripAdvisor comment, any Facebook post, any Facebook picture, it always contains Simon. One photo I just showed was Simon sitting at a table doing some card tricks with some young kids. The kids are that young that we all know what kids are like. They're probably not going to remember too much about the snorkeling. They probably didn't even spend too much time on the water, but at the end of the day, they've left the boat having a fantastic experience just because Simon took the time to sit down, engage with them, and pass on a little bit about what Simon's about. And so I guess, like you said, they probably felt like part of the crew at the end of the day, and that's the sort of experience that they took away, and they'll remember that for a very long time.
Yeah. So a very easy leap then for Simon in that conversation with the kids to talk about either the magic of the experience of the Barrier Reef, flipping the cards over and giving characters on the reef names on the card, so that they walk away with that little bit of clicky memory from that day. Because while it's great that they feel a great connection to him, he could be anywhere. He could be walking the Great Wall of China, and they could be having that connection with anyone, anywhere. We want to make sure that we really tie that to our Barrier Reef experience, so that that moment that the kids are sharing has that little extra kicker in it that starts to talk about it. And Ian, I'll come to you in just a moment, but I think I'm going to get your name wrong. Paula, I nearly called you Pauline. Paula's going to tell us the theme that you had a go at. It's not easy, is it? And I suppose the point here is you don't do this in 10 minutes under the pressure of the camera and the lights. This is a starting point. That's what the workbook is for. It's for you to take it away and work with your teams and say, well, how do we embed our story or our theme into that? But tell us a bit about the story that you came up with.
Oh. I guess it's about making people feel really comfortable about a new experience that they're unfamiliar with, and making them feel safe in, in doing something. Like a lot of our clients, for example, are from Japan and China, and some people from China haven't even seen blue skies for most of the year, and never seen, underneath the water at all, ever seen clear water. So there's some really simple things that we show them every day that's very unfamiliar to them. So I guess it's about, letting people know they're going to see things they've never seen before, and delivering in a friendly way. And
that's got a sense of mystery and adventure about it, doesn't it? So from the beginning of the storytelling, and Ian, you were talking before about how you're thinking about the whole journey that the customer goes through. You could wait until they have that on the day and go, wow, or you can drop little hints of it as you go along through the storytelling, so that that's reinforced on the day, so that we get the outcome of them being able to talk confidently about what it was that made that experience so unique. It's a bit like trying a good wine. Sometimes you need an expert to tell you what it is you're actually smelling and tasting. You think, it tastes good, but I don't know what it is about it that I can talk about. When given just that little bit of information, all of a sudden you become a wine connoisseur. You're telling everyone the story about the burnt toast and the others. So Ian, tell us a bit about, from the helicopter perspective, how you're thinking about taking a whole of business approach to this kind of theming and storytelling.
Well, we started off by saying that we can't change that the reef looks like the reef and the helicopter is the helicopter, and we're going to be at the same altitude. But we can just change how we go about setting expectations. And as a business, I've been looking at for a while now just the whole experience of how a customer deals with us as soon as they come in contact with our business, which means from the moment they pick up the phone or write to us. And that experience should just be exemplary. We've just set up a brand new customer services department to deal specifically with looking after the customer and change the focus from a proactive look after the customer rather than before we were a bit sort of more passive and let them come to us and let them bring it up. And this whole shift is in focus. So it's just about, I think we can probably set the expectations more and tell people more and tease people more about what they're going to see and set that up. I don't know if I'm going off topic, but I've got to say something about the experience of coming to this part of Australia. And people probably aren't here just for the reef trip. And there's probably more to the experience. I know we're all here and we're all reef operators, and I think the reef is run incredibly well, as we're saying, with some really first-class people. We work with a lot of different people, and it's extraordinary the effort that's put in. But I just wonder if on the land we should actually start to think a bit more about some other areas as well. I mean, has anyone else in this region had a poor experience in a restaurant? And are we putting our heads in the sand about this, or are we actually going to be prepared to do something? I was talking to someone the other day saying, well, why don't we invent some kind of like a TripAdvisor specifically for Cairns, where we could, everybody could go and log themselves in, and people could write reviews, and then if there were complaints, it would almost be like this self-policing kind of system. And I said, I was told, no, you couldn't possibly do something like that because you'd sort of upset the people that were getting complained about. Do you know what I mean? And, we can't set something like this because there's crap service going on here and here. I just think that, they've got to, this is a 5-star beautiful destination, and you've got to go with away because it's so expensive now. That's not our fault necessarily, but it's really expensive. But you've got to deliver a 5-class thing across the board. It's when you arrive in Cairns, that's all got to be. I'm sorry if that's all a bit off topic. You know what I mean? We're here to talk about the reef, but it's the experience of coming to Australia as well.
I'm going to pick on you, Russell, to bring a tour guide's experience to the story about how you weave a story together. But David, picking up on Ian's point there about the whole destination, the work that Tourism Queensland is doing and Jeff is leading in terms of the hero experiences is more than just this. We're just taking a little slice out tonight on GBR, which is a hero experience for Queensland. But Queensland is also looking at the whole experience delivery, and it's got to be about delivering on the promise. If you get a rotten review, you've got to do something with it. What do they say? 65% of people who wrote a negative review in TripAdvisor, when responded to within a couple of days, will write a positive. And a third of them will write more than one positive response to having their issue responded to. What a great turnaround to go from one negative to 2 positives in one go, just by being willing to respond and not say, oh, that's their problem, not mine. So that's everyone's individual responsibility. But David, do you want to jump in a bit about the TQ Experiences work?
Thanks, mate. Look, part of the project that we're doing within TQ is looking at every one of the destinations and trying to really hone down on what the hero experiences are in each of the destinations. So the industry, the operators, the RTO, TQ can have a singular focus, because I think in some ways Queensland's a destination where in a sense it can be all things to all people, but that problem is that's very difficult to sell, and then it becomes a bit confusing in terms of what we're trying to deliver the consumer. So that project's going forward. We're doing that in every destination. We're working with Jeff and with Rob in terms of the heroes for this particular destination. And look, in some destinations they're bleedingly obvious, and particularly in developed destinations like here or on the Gold Coast or whatever, but in other parts of Queensland, if you're looking at southern Queensland country, which is that Darling Downs area, it's not so obvious. And even in a location like the Sunshine Coast, it's, they sort of think they're competing with the Gold Coast because it's a beach destination, but they're not. There are some key points of difference to that Sunshine Coast destination, and they're better off not trying to compete with the Gold Coast and be uniquely the Sunshine Coast. So that's what the project's about. The fact is, though, is that across all these destinations there are some standout locations which are not a specific tourism destination, which is the Great Barrier Reef. It spans several of our tourism destinations, so that's why we've got this specific focus on the GBR, because frankly the GBR is not only Queensland's #1 tourism destination, but it's Australia's, and we need to get that right.
Absolutely. So Russell, talk to us about the structuring of a great story that takes a customer through a journey, because you've been a journey leader many, many times.
Well, I guess interpretation. Sam Ham, our sponsor
guru
on the
in
screen
chief.
there.
Yep.
Yeah, there's been a lot written about interpretation, and I guess there's a few main elements about it. I mean, the thematic nature of it, having a take-home message, that one sentence key message that you're really trying to drill home into people's minds, whether it's about conservation, whether it's about their particular experience, that having a guide really focused on what is that one single theme, that one message that we want them to take away is critical. Picking your customer, Sam Ham talks about relevance. So, when we're talking about a rainforest tree, if you know that you've got people from North America, you want to try and relate it to their forests or what have you. You try and pick something in their world that they can link it to, so they have memory links. There are a range of use of props, and there are some great examples, of course, on the reef as well as on land. But it's that trying to tailor in to the customer. I mean, we're all talking about how we're marketing to individuals now. Yeah. We can get a good feel for what our overall customer base likes, but in the end, it's I think the individual guide trying to see that lady needs to sit in the shade, or see that person's having a good time, so let's try and boost that, and being responsive.
Or that those kids are into that thing, which you could then translate. I'll pick on Alexandra Coughlin in a moment, because there's some research here that I want you to have a look at on page 47 of your guidebook. But I think Adam's point before about taking a moment before you get on board, Ian, before the customer gets on board, to know just that little bit about them, means that the story can get a little twist. While even though you're running an audio program over the headset, that ability then just to give the story a little twist to meet the market need might be the turn that they really need. And Alexandra's going to talk just briefly. I didn't tell her much about this, I only gave her a few minutes warning, but it's her work, so there's no one better to do it. And it's about understanding the difference between satisfaction with an experience and what is important to the customer. And what we've got to make sure we understand is how we get both right. We spend a lot of time talking about how to build satisfaction, but do we actually understand what the customer takes away as being important? Because we want more than just good reviews. We also want them to feel as though the moment that they had delivered on their expectations. So Alex, you want to talk about a little bit about this graph, which is easy enough to read.
So it's this is the graph that he's talking about.
Page 47.
Yeah.
Page 47 up on that top right-hand corner.
And it's actually, it comes out of this idea of importance performance analysis, which some of you might know about. So what does somebody consider important on their trip? What have they gone out? What do they value? What do they reckon is going to be really important to them to create satisfaction? Versus how did you perform on that attribute as an operator? So that's sort of the standard way of doing an importance performance. What this diagram does, which is a lot more complicated than your standard importance performance analysis, says that some attributes might be really important when they do well. So something like marine biodiversity, if you have lots of it, it sits in that top right corner, which is a delighter. If you don't have lots of it, it's not going to have a parallel converse effect. So if you don't have lots of marine biodiversity, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to end up with a dissatisfied customer. On the other hand, something like customer service, if you do it really, really well, you're not necessarily going to end up with delight, because people are expecting really high customer service. Yeah. So that you performed really well on it matches their expectations. Yeah. If you perform really poorly on it, then you end up in this frustrator at the bottom of the graph. which means that if you perform really poorly on it, you've got a much bigger effect on dissatisfaction than you would have if you performed really highly on it towards satisfaction.
Yeah.
So what I did for this study was, I was actually based up here for 4 years doing a postdoc. I've now moved down south, but this was whilst I was still up here. And I pretty much took a trip from beginning to end. So when you first phone up to book your ticket, when you arrive at Reef Terminal, when you get on the boat, etc., right until when you get off the boat and you meet your coach, or you take a taxi, you walk back, whatever. Working with about 12 different operators, we highlighted those attributes that they considered to be really important, and then we did a survey with passengers. So we ended up, I think, probably about 400 passengers for this particular study, saying, well, we thought, we expected this to do really well, we were satisfied with the trip, and then you sort of work out this graph from there. So you can see all the different attributes which are listed from the study on that graph.
Absolutely. So a couple of really important points in there.